All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Tuesday the 5th. We have the S&P up just slightly on the day. I think SPY was up a total of 7 basis points. Traded in a pretty tight range for the day. Once again, the Qs as well as the small caps outperformed. I talked about this more in the pre-market session. Basically, my view is for the overall U.S. market is that S&P, which I talked about yesterday, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse with this, but I think that the S&P is just going to kind of move in a small range right now. Again, I'm not forecasting that or anything like that, but the reason why I say that is I think there's a lot of cross currents within the S&P. For example, we've got some very strong sectors and we've got a couple weak sectors, and I think because the S&P is the large caps and there's a lot of sectors that are kind of moving that way. We are breaking out here slowly, just like we've been moving for the last couple of weeks. So I don't think just because we've gone over resistance here, I think that's nice, but I don't think that we're going to be moving leaps and bounds. I think it's going to be continuing to kind of crawl along. Maybe we come back in here, who knows. But really, and I continue to think, even though I think the Qs are getting overbought here, which I talked about that in last night's video, but I think even more so, we're up another 30 basis points. You could see the RSI is a 71, so we are now officially overbought in the Qs. We're right at that 52-week high. We've had a real nice swing. Hope you've enjoyed it. Take some profits. Maybe wait for a little bit of a pullback at this point, and then kind of reload with some positions. That's what swing trading and trading is all about. IWM, on the other hand, has been an absolute monster. Is up another 62 basis points, so continues to chug along. Outside and again, so I think these things, while again the small caps are getting overbought here, I think it's appropriate to take profits if you're holding short-term positions. Again, this video is just for information purposes only. I'm not giving any recommendations, but just telling you what I would do as a swing trader. If you've got long-term accounts, kind of no need to overmanage those, let those go, but the small caps and the Nasdaq are moving a lot quicker today. And if you kind of take a look at some of the best performers, Amazon is just absolutely in beast mode, right around 1700 now. I mean, look at the move that it's gone from 1600 to 1700, kind of in a blink of an eye. What, a couple weeks? Maybe. So really impressive move. Remember, if you've watched my video before, I've been an Amazon bull. I said that it should take out the earnings high. Remember, on earnings they had just spectacular results, and I've been a fan of this. I've been selling. I don't have any major trades on right now in Amazon, other than long a couple things that have Amazon in it. But I've been saying that I thought it was a good possibility that that Amazon would take out the 52-week highs. Just needed a nice market environment to do it. So really, I think that's kind of your best performer out there in terms of sectors. The Chinese internets have been very hot. We've been talking about those in the last couple of videos. I decided this was close enough. This is my target. So I took more of this trade off today. I'm leaving the last piece on. I'm leaving a runner on. But these are moving almost exactly in lockstep. The Chinese internet names, your Baidu, your Baba, your JD, as a group, right? They're moving basically the same as U.S. internets. I think U.S. internets outperformed a little bit, maybe a different looking chart, but they both have had exceptional. Geez, look at this move in FTN. By the way, I am long. So like I said, I'm long Amazon through a number of things. FTN is one of them. I've been long FTN for a while. So look at this thing. Just go ahead and break out. So real nice move in this one. But yeah, the last couple days, the Chinese internets and the U.S. internets are moving in lockstep here. So just a very, very nice momentum that this group has. Speaking of the momentum ETF, that's also right at 52-week, close to very 52-week highs. They just did a rebalance. I was just reading about this from the guys over at Bloomberg. They just rebalanced this ETF, and it was kind of an interesting some names that were added. They do a semi-annual rebalance. So if you go up MTM, and this isn't going to surprise you. What's the number one weight in this? It's Amazon, right? 5%. Microsoft's in there. Boeing, Visa. But if you look, a couple of new names have been added in here. I think AB, what is this? ABMD, this name that's been just going like crazy. Another one of these healthcare equipment names that I've been talking about. By the way, this group continues to go. So I won't spend much time on this because I talk about it all the time. But listen, this is doing the same thing. What did IBB do today? The Biotech ETF, which everybody seems to love. Flat. What did the small cap healthcare do today? Outperformed again, up another 0.5% today. So this continues to truck. Now overbought as well. Same thing with XHE, which I am also long, up another 0.5%. So again, saying the same things over here, but really some huge performance in healthcare and biotech this year, as long as you're in the right groups. Okay, so what do we see in terms of option activity? I want to talk about this Roku trade. This was something that I sent out. We do put a newsletter. I know some of you who are watching the video, this gets sent to members as well as it gets sent to out to the public. It's a free video that I put together every night. But yeah, I mean, get involved with some of our plays that we're putting together. So I talked about this weekend, right? This was my trade that I put out. Freebie trade, and that I highlighted that I went long. Again, most of the trades that for the most part, I can't put on every single trade that I talk about, but for the most part, there's probably about 80% of them that I talk about that are long setups. I do play, unless there's really names that I've got on in common when I happen to see some option activity or something to that effect. I was talking about XLB as well the other day. I'll get to Roku in a minute, but this is actually starting to work as well. This was XLB that I tweeted out. I think I did this on Sunday night. This is starting to move. So, names like Dow, DuPont, I think perked up a little bit today. Good to see. At this point, I am looking for some other names than just straight tech. I think mission accomplished if you've been in some of these tech names. Now, why can't I find it now? Let's see. Oh, that's where I was this weekend. Yeah, so freebie on Roku. So this is what I sent out in terms of Roku. I put this up all over the place. I see a lot of people talking about it today. I talked about it this weekend. I went long already. So again, my plan, if you're a member or if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, my goal is to get in names before they see. This is momentum call buying that we're seeing in Roku. This is not anything. This is not rocket science. Guys who are buying Roku today are noticing the momentum, right? What my goal is to do is to get into these names before the momentum call buyers, right? Isn't it so much better once you're already in a name and people are buying calls? So, I've been talking about this setup since the weekend. Hope you got in it with me, but this was pretty nice, right? A break of the downtrend line. I was in it here, and I wrote it up to here. I think I sold it somewhere in here. And then I got back into it once we saw some call buyers come out. So, just like anything else, you take profits and then you kind of wait and kind of wait for a signal. So again, there was a call buyer on Friday, but the majority of the call buying happened today in this name. So again, getting into these names, you do not, in my opinion, again, you do not have to wait for call buying to get into names. You want to be in names and watch the momentum call buyers come in, right? So that's how we play. A few other groups that I thought were interesting today. Look at what copper has been doing the last couple days. It did not finish on the highs. Maybe I don't know what this was up here, but still, regardless of this kind of crazy looking candle, let's see what happened here. Okay, maybe a fat finger, because yeah, that doesn't look right for copper futures. Sometimes they make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but copper is now above the 200-day moving average. Notice the consolidation. I guess maybe coiling, you would call this. Several moving averages all lining up together, and this is resolving itself to the upside. So names to pay attention to, which we saw call buying today, FCX. You do have a version point of control up here, a VPOC. You know, maybe it takes this out and digests a little bit. So personally, I would go out a little farther. Notice we've come all the way back to this crazy earnings move that we saw, big sell-off. So we're kind of right back into this range. Other names, remember, I believe it was last week. Oops. We saw big call buying in tech. Tech Resources, this is also a name in that space. So really took off today, up 4.7% today. SCCO is another copper name, you know, also coming alive a bit. That's a nice bounce off that 200-day moving average. Gold was also saw a little bit of call buying. You know, gold. I did not follow any of the call buying today in gold, even though I think it's been. If you go to the gold futures, you know, you could see. I mean, this is a lot of consolidation in here. This just looks like a horrible chart to me. I've been staying away from gold mining stocks. This is just too sideways for me. I would rather wait until this. Why force the issue? Why make predictions? Why force the issue? Wait until the price confirms it. It's got to get above 1380 in gold for me to even, you know, want to get involved in such a sideways, ridiculous looking chart. Eventually it'll do it probably. I mean, but even going back, you know, if you've wasted time in gold over the last 2 years, you know, that stinks, because this is just a complete sideways chart. So you can hope and you can dream, but I would let the price confirm it for you. So yes, we did see a little bit of call buying, you know, so unless you want to play gold GLD for a day trade, you know, that's fine as well. Let's see what the XME chart looks like. The metals and mining chart looks like while we're at it. This looks a little bit more constructive, but I think you may want to pick and choose a couple names in here. This ETF is kind of difficult because you do have a lot of gold miners in here as well, which is going to be dependent on gold. So, you know, names like Tech Resources, names like FCX might be a little bit of a better play right now in this space. So we talked about that. We talked about the Chinese internet names that have been strong. I'm not going to go over each one of those charts. I also like the robotics chart at this point. You know, in this name, I do believe the NVIDIA is the biggest weight, but just looking at the technicals here, the robotics ETF is starting to get above. So I did establish a position in that today. A few other trades, you know, so I've really been sticking with a lot of small cap names rather than playing the larger cap names. I do have a couple positions on in the large caps, but what's been really working for me, you know, Six Flags, I talked about this name a couple days ago. We've seen repeat call buying in this one out to September. There's a decent amount of short interest in this name, so I was able to take my first target in this one today. You know, a couple of names that we saw some option activity. Grub kind of fell on its face today. There was a nice big call buyer, but take a look. This has not been able to get above the value area. No close above the value area yet. I would still keep it on your radar. We saw some call buying in this this tanker name, STNG, today, which we saw yesterday. So that's 2 days, mostly in the morning in this name. Notice you've got another one of these VPOCs right around 338ish. Let me just go through a couple more names and we'll call it a night. Eaton, you know, so a lot of momentum kind of stuff, right? There was a little bit of Allergan and Eaton calls today. You know, those are on, you know, basically chatter. Someone's taking a stake or there's an activist in there. There's a little bit of BlackBerry calls, a little bits and pieces of some names that were bought. A little bit of Disney short dated calls that went up. So, you know, this is one trade that caught my eye. You know, I didn't talk about retail yet, but man, what a mover in. So let's talk. So again, there's some groups that are showing some really crazy strength. XRT, look at this move the last 2 days in retail. I thought I was smart because I went long XRT in here, took targets here, took the trade off. But, you know, it's actually a nice bull flag that this thing was in, which, you know, we've seen bull flags all over the place that have worked really well. You know, Apple's one name that had a really nice bull flag, but they've been all over the place, especially in the more momentum names. But what a move in XRT. So, you know, there's a couple more names that are reporting tomorrow. Reporting in the next couple of weeks, one of which is SIG. I did structure a long trade for this one. I think this will be interesting. You know, so why did I do that? Well, what is SIG? It's Signet Jewelers. It's Jared's. He went to Jared Zales, and I think it's one other name in this space. Look at what Tiffany's has done. Now I know this is Tiffany's is different than Zales, but if there's a chance that there's maybe something going on here, I went long, even though this name moves big for earnings. But I did give this a try here in SIG. You call it a counter trend trade, but the way that these names have been moving has just been out of control. GII, GIII, ended up 10%. Watch for continuation in this name. Burlington. Once these names pop out like this, like Burlington was one last week. Look at I don't know if anybody's been paying attention to what Burlington. I know we have a trader in the room who put this on right after earnings, but this one wasn't extended going into earnings and popped, but it's still going in this one. So sometimes it's 3 or 4 days. You could put Bollinger Bands on here. Once they get outside the Bollinger Bands on earnings, sometimes they stay outside of the Bollinger Bands for a few days. So I would watch that GIII. Also another name in this space, which has yet to really go nuts like some of these other retailers. Look at Restoration Hardware is just chomping at the bit right there. And there was a really nice size trade. Now they report, I believe, on the 11th. Let's see. Yeah, on the 11th. Look at this size trade that somebody put on. Again, another name that is not cheap in options. Look at the implied volatility. 100% implied volatility. So super, super huge. They put on a June 110, 120 call spread, thinking that this thing breaks out or has a chance to break out with some positive results. And even though it's a call spread, they still spent a lot of money on this, right? The amount of the premium is about $1.6 million on basically an earnings flyer. So I think that's definitely a name to watch. I might be playing that one next week on the 11th when that goes ahead and reports. I would also watch for a move into earnings for Restoration Hardware. These things have a way of kind of trapping you to keep out of that. So that's it. As I mentioned, both IWM and the Qs are a little bit overbought here. The VIX is really, really low. We got the VIX perked up a little bit today and then kind of cooled off. But where's my sheet with the VIX on it? It really kind of simmered off. I think we're back below. Yeah, we're at a 1240. So I'm just going to spend 1 minute on this, and that'll be the end of the video. But what does this mean? What I always say this. I said this in the room earlier. What do we know right now about option prices? When the VIX, there's very little things with the market that we do and we don't know. What do we know for certain? The VIX is a 12.4. What does that mean? It means that insurance buying puts on the S&P right now is extremely cheap. It's much cheaper than it was, a month ago. So, buying insurance, buying a little bit of puts against your if you want to stay in the game. If not, of course, you can go more into cash. But depending on how your portfolio is, buying a little bit of puts here are really cheap. And you don't have to come up with a fancy hedge. Just buy puts. Those are cheap. You don't have to go long the VIX. You don't have to do a whole bunch of other kind of crazy things. You could just go long SPY puts as insurance, right? I mean, the goal of that is to have, really, in any hedge, is to have it go out worthless, right? Because if your hedge goes out worthless, that means that your portfolio did really well. All right, so I will leave it there. Have a great night, everybody, and see you back in the trading room tomorrow.